Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Final Whistle, a Lewiston Tribune sports podcast. I'm Sam Taylor, sports reporter with the Lewiston Tribune and the Moscow Pullman Daily News, here with Trevor Junt.
Also a sports reporter from the Moscow Pullman Daily News and the Lewiston Tribune. How you doing, Sam?
Doing well, Trevor. How are you?
Pretty good. It's been a wet, but also spring's coming.
Yes, indeed.
A lot of rain around here.
Spring is in the air. It smells kind of nice. I love the smell of rain.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's so refreshing. And with spring comes baseball. We'll also talk a little bit about spring football. Idaho and Washington State now in the full swing of things, conducting their spring football practices. And then we'll talk about Pullman boys soccer with NAIA, historic achievement for that program. That and a little bit more here on the Final Whistle. Be sure to tune in to YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and online at lmtribune.com to hear this podcast every week. Starting with baseball, Washington State and Lewis Clark State baseball. Lots of fun things going on. LC State, maybe not as dominant as in the past, but they kind of hit a groove, sweeping Warner Pacific this past weekend after a historic 17-inning loss last weekend, or the two weekends ago. And then Washington State baseball, not the best start to the season, but they're 6-6 in the Mountain West. They took a series 2 out of 3 out of San Jose State, who had an identical conference record to theirs, and just kind of moving along. So yes, for both college baseball teams, Trevor, what kind of stands out to you? What's kind of most exciting?
First, LC State. Let's talk about Lewis Clark State baseball. Charlie Updegrave, he's one of their bashers in the lineup. He hit a home run on Saturday, and he is now leading the Cascade Conference all time in home runs with 40 home runs, 40 career home runs. So yeah, he went 5 for 5 in game 2 of their doubleheader on Saturday, and then 3 for 5, I think 3 for 4 maybe, and the game before that, and tied the record for the most hits in a doubleheader for a Warriors player. So LC State is definitely interesting. They kind of fell out of the rankings a few weeks ago. I think it was April 2nd they fell out of the rankings out of the top 25, but they are technically, if we count the 26 team, they had the most votes outside the top 25, and they're just trying to work their way back into the top 25 of the NAIA college rankings. So yeah, definitely an improvement this week against Warner Pacific. They shut them out in one game, 17-0, and then 14-3 in the next game. LC State's looking better. They definitely had a struggle at the start of the season, kind of when that high streak kind of fell off a little bit, and then back on that high streak right now.
Absolutely. You mentioned Charlie Updegrave and his historic accomplishment, being the home run king at the Cascade Conference all time, and he's batting. I guess college batting averages tend to trend a little higher than the major leagues, of course, but Absolutely. Still he's batting an impressive 407, like that. You mentioned going 5 for 5 the other day. That's just insane. And just to see, he's been kind of a model of consistency. It's just been phenomenal. He's been here for a long time and kind of been that model of consistency and just the heart of the order, both, in terms of just actually being in the heart of the order and then just being the heart of that team and just seeing that kind of leading the turnaround where, 10 losses, you won't say like that's a bad season or anything, but, we're about halfway through the year and LC State's had years where, they are in the single digits on the season after like 40 games when it comes to the losses. And so,
yeah, I covered that. You talked about that 17-inning game. I covered that game and got to spend time with Denny Grubb, by the way, an NAIA Hall of Famer now. So good for him. Good for Denny Grubb. But also, Charlie Updegrave hit 2 home runs in that doubleheader as well. Wow. And one thing that Jake Taylor said afterwards is that he's just an electric player. They're glad to have him in their lineup. They're glad to have him on Lewis Clark State College baseball. So yeah, he's definitely standing through and showing up for LC State.
And what's ahead for LC State is that they're staying at home in Lewiston, and next weekend they'll host College of Idaho Friday, doubleheader Saturday, and then again on Sunday. So another 4-game set ahead with College of Idaho. Looking forward to that. And then it's weird that's their second to last home series of the regular season. They've got a road series at Bushnell, and then they host British Columbia, which is ranked number 24 for the last 4 games.
They struggle with British Columbia at the start of the season.
Right, making that trip up north.
Yeah, so it's interesting to see what's going to happen there.
Definitely. And, of course, still kind of in the running of if you take a look at the Cascade Conference baseball standings right, we'll see that kind of the teams. I think they were last week. They were three, and the two teams above them are Bushnell and British Columbia, and those are the two teams they end the season with. So the last 2 weekends, obviously we're in the last 3 weeks of the season, but the last 2 weeks in particular will be super indicative of how high the Warriors can go.
So kind of make or break time of the season is coming up for them.
Absolutely. And then
WSU baseball, you got to cover. Well, you went to that game on Saturday, right?
I got to be a spectator for a day, which is kind of nice, kind of refreshing. But yeah, Washington State baseball, they started the year like 0-7 or something crazy like that. Kind of a tough start to the year. Now they're 11 and 12 and 19, and as of this recording, and 6-6 in the Mountain West. They took 2 out of 3 out from San Jose State this past weekend. They beat San Francisco today. For the Cougars, they're turning the corner. It seems like the Mountain West is, other than Nevada, which dominated against them the other weekend. They've kind of had a moderate amount of success, and it all kind of started with a dominant, 10-2 showing this last Friday. The offense is there. They've got a lot of new faces. The pitching staff is kind of remade. You'll see a lot of turnover for these teams. Cougars won 6-5. I believe was the final score on Saturday over San Jose State, and that was a walk-off sac fly by Max Hartman, a Canadian baseball player, and so it was kind of cool to see him. It was the bottom of the ninth, classic. The biggest in front of the biggest crowd in since 2015 for Washington State baseball. And you saw Griffin Myers make his way 90 feet from home at third base, and then all Max Hartman needed to do was really hit that ball far, and he did exactly what he needed to do. Hit that to straightaway center. Obviously caught by the outfielder, but it was enough time for Myers to get home, and there was a celebration all the way around the base paths. Of course, they brought the water. The whole team came out of the dugout to mob him as they went kind of around the base paths, and they brought the water coolers. And eventually, by the end of it, Hartman had his shirt off, and so and the largest crowd, which had dwindled because it did go into extras, and so it was pretty stupendous to see that large of a crowd on Parents Weekend treated to a walk-off win like that.
WC baseball, by the way, has a Mountain West, I guess, gauntlet coming up. I don't know if it's 2 hard teams, but it's a lot of Mountain West games. New Mexico, they have a 3-game series. Nevada, a 3-game series. And then they play Fresno State on April 25th. As we come to the crutch of the season, it is time for, I guess, them to step up and continue success for the rest of the season and in the Mountain West Conference.
Absolutely. And year 2 under head coach Nathan Choate, and he kind of came in as like a pitching guru. And so it's been interesting to see a lot of, like Grant Taylor, he's not on the team anymore, but as a senior, he's chose to stay within the coaching change. And he was on record as saying that just Nathan Choate just kind of helped him refine his perspective on pitching. And he felt that he left his senior year a much, much better pitcher than how he had entered just like 9 months earlier. And so for one of the most successful pitchers in recent Cougar history to say that, to kind of to stick through, to stay at Washington State through the coaching change and kind of find himself bettered for it. I think that says a lot about what Nathan Choate can do, and I think these pitchers, it's just kind of the beginning for a lot of these guys. Yeah. Then
I guess what we both covered, or I guess what happened is WCU football and Idaho football going on. WCU has their spring game this weekend. Is that correct?
Right, spring showcase. Kind of a interesting twist to things, and not the traditional 11-on-11 scrimmage that we're used to. Instead, it'll more closely resemble practice, where they'll have a 7-on-7 scrimmage, and just broken up by some drills and just other things. Basically, a traditional practice that we're kind of used to seeing. That will be open to the public at Gisa Field around 1 p.m. And so, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. It's Jimmy Rogers, new coach, bringing in like 16 South Dakota State Jackrabbits from his former stop. So a lot of these guys are, FCS national champions. Some of them 2-time FCS national champions. They're decent at what they do. He's brought a lot of depth in the running back and linebacking rooms in particular. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. And it's kind of too early to tell, but it's been of how anything is going to actually turn out. But it's been an interesting few weeks for Washington State football.
That's the thing with spring ball. It feels like is like fans seem to over exemplify how much spring football actually means, I guess. Because yes, it is building a program, but also there's going to be struggles. There's going to be issues going on. Yeah, you're figuring out those issues. You're figuring out the problems, and you're trying to fix them in spring football. spring games and spring practices. So yeah, absolutely. I think that although they do mean something, they don't mean as much as we may think they do.
Yeah. And speaking of struggles, I mean, you kind of saw that firsthand for the Idaho offense. You were out there scrimmage this past weekend, and you saw that they didn't even score a single touchdown, right?
Yes, yeah. The Idaho offense didn't score a single touchdown. They had a hard time they struggled moving the ball down the field. But the defense looked terrific. To be fair, Maurice Himes had 2 sacks. Donald Parham had 2 sacks. A few picks off of some backup quarterbacks. A defensive lineman, Matthias McLean, got a pick. So yeah, it was definitely like they showed up and they performed really well. But as Thomas Ford Jr. said, the defense is going to have the advantage over the offense in this early in the spring because offense hasn't installed everything that they want to install yet. They said one thing, red zone wasn't even installed yet. So when they got in the red zone, of course they're not going to perform well because there's no plays like that are installed in the red zone offense yet. So it was different. It was different. Junior linebacker Dylan Lane said that Court Dennison, the defensive coordinator of Idaho, is a genius. He said he had over 40 play calls on their call sheet. So yeah, the defense really showed up and showed out. I think a few things to note were positional battles. Ford Jr. talked about how there's wide receiver battles, tight end battles along the offense. And then, of course, what everybody wants to hear about is the quarterback battle. It was Jack Wagner and Nick Josephic. I mean, neither guy has really made good headway. Neither of them looked terrifically great or anything. Wagner had a really big play to Emerson Cortez Menjivar, and it was like a 60-yard gain. So it was a nice pass. He said, I think this is what he said. Don't quote me on this, but he said he saw the safety coming down to cover an in breaking route. He liked his matchup and he just fired the ball and he hit Cortez Menjivar on a 60-yard gain. So that was the highlight of the day for the offense. But yeah, I mean, again, there's not like too much to worry about, even though the offense didn't score a single touchdown. It's more about giving the defense credit. A few guys said that because the defense played so well, the offense and the defense go back and forth in practices. That's just a sign of an overall good team. Yeah. And yeah, so I expect maybe coming this Saturday in the scrimmage that it might be a little bit different. The offense might do better or even do better than the defense this upcoming Saturday in their new scrimmage. And then they have that spring game in 2 weeks on Thursday. So yeah, Idaho football is ramping up and starting. The Vandals program is getting ready to go with the new regime and the new players and everything. I think Dylan Lane said afterwards, he said, this is a quote from him, he said, "This is the nature of FCS football these days. For every team, it's a whole new 11 on each side of the ball with new coaches too. So it's about coming together when you're a new program and then, again, gelling and becoming that best program that can get the scheme correctly."
Sweet.
So it was definitely a very cool thing to cover. I think that the players are very kind. I think the players are very, I don't know, just great stand-up guys. I think Thomas Ford Jr. is a stand-up guy, and he's fun to cover as well. So Idaho football ramping up, and I guess they're learning. They're getting prepared for the new season.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of these Washington State and Idaho Cougar football and Vandal football programs kind of linked, having new coaches once again. 3 years ago, they had coaches in year one. Dickard was year one of a heavy asterisk, obviously, because he was interim for the season prior, the chaotic 2021 season that was. But Eck, of course, was a new guy coming in with a new staff and a new vision. And, those visions kind of contrasted in week one of the season at Martin Stadium. And the Vandals nearly pulled off the upset. If it weren't for a future NFL linebacker, Deion Henley, making the game-saving play in that one. And once again, Idaho and Washington State will kind of kick off new coaching eras in Martin Stadium in the Battle of the Palouse on August 31st. And so that'll certainly be something to look forward to, especially for our newsroom, and looking forward to that meeting. But
for the newsroom, it's going to be a blast.
Oh, also, absolutely.
For fans around the Palouse, I think that place would be jumping.
I hope so. I think Washington State doesn't, especially if the schedule that Washington State has, where they only have 3 home games in October combined between October and November. That's going to be a really key opportunity to fill up Martin Stadium. I mean, you expect the Apple Cup with UW coming to town to be sold out, but if that Vandal Washington State game, I mean, I think the goal definitely for Washington State and the University of Idaho should be to sell that out because, I mean, you've got, the two fan bases right here on the Palouse coming together, seeing their, the exciting kickoff of the Ford and the Rogers eras. And one thing that stood out about Thomas Ford Jr.'s hiring, the players kind of led the call in getting into social media and encouraging fans to, email the administration and email the athletic director to encourage them to hire Thomas Ford, because he was an assistant at Idaho for 2 years. Spent last year as Oregon State's running backs coach, and as a special teams coordinator and the running backs coach for the Vandals. He helped a lot of guys just have excellent careers. Two of the guys, Hogan Hatton and Jermaine Jackson, who were rookies in the NFL last year, and played special teams under Ford. And so he's got a huge track record of success of just like helping guys maximize their potential at the FCS level of college football, and use that to springboard into the rest of their lives, which I think is great.
I can tell as well as those players love Thomas Ford Jr. They love playing for him. They love playing under him and listening to him, which is, again, great for a program. That's what you want your players to do for your coach, especially a new coach, a new regime. I mean, coming off of such success, FCS playoffs 2 years in a row for Idaho, you're coming off of that success. You want to, I don't know if it's mimic or just kind of also recreate your own success, Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting season, and we're going to see how they perform under Thomas Ford Jr. But I think it's obvious that they love him and they love the coaching staff that they play under.
Yeah, and you see kind of a similar thing for Washington State. I mean, it's a little bit of a different situation, obviously, because Rogers doesn't necessarily have the ties to the institution that he's at now that Ford had, but he has the ties to his staff, obviously most of them coming over from South Dakota State, and then to 16 members of his roster that or more that came over from Brookings to Pullman, and there's that kind of dedicated vision of they want, some of them could easily have played somewhere else. They were getting higher NIL offers at maybe Power 4 schools, but they chose to follow Rogers to Pullman to compete for spots. And Rogers, it's interesting how spring football works, because you can say these guys are playing O-line, starting obviously Zevi Eckhouse is the quarterback in there. There's some guys that like Christian Hilborn and Brock Dew, who are gonna be kind of stalwarts of that offensive line, because they've been here the longest, they've got that experience. But then there's other competitions, like especially at the skill positions, running back, etc., where kind of competition is so deep and so wide open that it'll be super interesting to see how that all transpires.
And there's players transferring out right now too for WSU.
Yeah.
Schulenbaker is one of that's really started. He had a terrific year last year, but obviously there's competition on his position. Rogers brought in guys from South Dakota State, and so there's going to be competition there. I guess that's a tough thing to see after last year, a freshman that goes off, is transferring. But I guess, yeah. I think that also 16 transfers is something that shows of who Rogers is and what coach he is. What do you think about? I mean, have you covered too many practices this year? Or?
Yeah, just about 3 or so.
Okay, so how is Rogers, I guess, assimilating to WSU football?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a cause of him assimilating and also kind of bringing his own vision to the front, and kind of not necessarily just kind of marrying that view, because it's now less than 20 guys from last year's roster that are still on this year's roster. But that includes quarterback Zevi Eckhouse, who started the Holiday Bowl and who's going to be kind of a key. Rogers spoke very highly of his talent, his leadership ability, and now the key will be to kind of hone that talent and maybe reduce the interceptions and turnovers and fine tune the decision making. But I think in speaking of some of these guys, especially the players, the players from last year's roster that have stayed, the common thread is that they had a key choice was to stay and fight for playing time and figure out and stay in Pullman, but maybe push their comfort zone a little bit with a new staff coming through. Some of them had offers to follow Dickard, which some of them did, or they could find another spot where maybe their playing time was assured, or they were kind of a little bit more sure of their value and what was there for them. But they chose to stay in Pullman, and for some of them they've effectively lost a lot of the playing time, and in response they've decided to transfer or been advised to transfer, and that's totally respectable. But for others, they've kind of stayed and kind of cemented their own path. We spoke to Hudson Cedarland the other day, who fans may remember as a linebacker, and he is on this roster this year as a tight end. Okay. Which is super unique. He actually had his locker packed up. He was ready to transfer because in texting with Rogers and his coaching staff, he had asked, "Hey, do you guys think I could play tight end for you?" And they said no promises. We'll talk about it. And so he, at that point, it was not looking too good for him playing tight end. And he figured, my last year of college football eligibility, might as well go out and play tight end somewhere. Might as well do it. Only got one chance here. Let's go make the most of it. But he had his locker packed and he decided, hey, I'm going to head up to the 5th floor, see if I can find Rogers, plead my case, and say, hey, can I play tight end? I want to stay in Pullman, but I want to play tight end, and that's important to me. And so he actually ran into Rogers. It was his first time meeting him. He shook his hand and introduced himself, and he said, hey, coach, I want to play tight end. And basically the response that he said he got from Rogers was, of course, let's do it.
Okay.
And so it was that kind of, college football, the transfer portal, players get so caught up in like, hey, I want this, I want X, I want Y, I want playing time, etc. And a lot of it, is though a lot of those communications are done over text or phone or Zoom, and so you don't necessarily get a chance to shake someone's hand, to meet them, and to like just kind of have a heart to heart and talk to them. And so Hudson almost transferred without even meeting Rogers once. And so outside of Zoom and phone calls. And so it was his decision to kind of just go up to the 5th floor, run into him by chance, and talk to him. And that kind of convinced him to stay. And so I'm sure there were other factors as well, but just that chance to, like I said, to meet someone, to look them in the eye, and to come to an understanding, I think is something that we may not see as much in college sports, but is something that I think this staff is, at least willing to do, and the players are willing to do. And I think it sounds maybe basic or like the bare minimum, but like I said, it almost didn't happen. Hudson almost left without meeting Rogers once, and he met Rogers once and talked about, his desires, and they came to an understanding. And now he's competing in the tight end room, and we'll see how that works out, on Saturdays this year. But super, super exciting story, and I think it was great of Hudson to share that with us.
I don't know how common, I guess, position change is in college football, but what I can remember most recently is Deion Henley was a wide receiver at one of his previous colleges, then went to Nevada and became a linebacker, and then was obviously the star linebacker, as you mentioned earlier in this podcast, at WSU, and then got drafted by the Chargers. So I think it's interesting to see those guys change positions and then hopefully excel, or they do excel because they're just that athletic or that good at the new position. But yeah, that's the most recent example I can think of.
Yeah, it's definitely rare. I think you're right. It's definitely rare, but it's cool when it happens, because Hudson, in his case, he played tight end in high school, so he's no stranger to it. But he had just kind of been profiled as more of a linebacker fit. Obviously, he played linebacker and tight end in high school, and so that was where he was sliding in at the college football level. But now he has a chance to switch it up, play tight end, put on a crimson practice jersey instead of a white, and see what happens. So nice. Exciting times.
That's very cool. And then I guess high school prep roundup. We have the Pullman soccer team.
Yeah.
To talk about. So what's going on with the Pullman soccer team, Sam?
So Pullman, the Greyhounds, they're undefeated. They are ranked number 1 in the state RPI rankings. It's the first time in school history that the Pullman boys soccer program has been ranked number 1 in the RPI rankings, and so I think it's just it's a great indication, 1, of the talent of this team, the dedication of this team, and then 2, of the quality of their schedule. They played, they traveled to Vancouver, Washington, and played all right long, and played a couple schools, on the western side of the state earlier this season. And they've played, obviously their league really strongly, Greater Spokane League, and some of their other non-conference games they've played very well. And so they beat Deer Park, yeah, most recently 10-2, yeah. And so you saw Clarence Dolan have a hat trick, 3 goals in that game, also get in on 2 assists, and you saw every other goal scored, the 7 other goals scored by 7 individual players, and so that was super unique to see. You got a lot of great talented players in that team.
I think their closest win might have been either 1-0 or 2-0.
Yeah.
But I mean, players like Clarence Dolan, Marcelo Romero, and then their goalie or their goalkeeper Milo Wexler, always the guys that I hear, because I get the calls from Doug Winchell too to get in the box scores, and he's like, okay, you're gonna want to write down this name because this guy's gonna be read a lot, and it's Clarence Dolan every single time.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see those players that just show up for Pullman soccer and then play well. And yeah, it'll be a very cool story if they are able to succeed in the playoffs and succeed the rest of the season, stay undefeated maybe. Yeah, it's definitely a very interesting and cool topic that we got going on there.
Right on. Yeah.
I mean, number one in the statewide ranking is incredible. You said first time ever?
First time ever for them, number one in their RPI, and I think that's best in like at the 2A level at the state.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, that's extraordinary, and so super interesting for them to, and that's kind of the only level they have to worry about, obviously, to in order to claim a state championship.
And then what else, Sam? What else do we have going on? We have Clarkson softball.
Yeah, you had the chance to visit Clarkson softball. Obviously, they played a really tough opponent. But Trevor, what did you see from Clarkson softball and those bantams?
First, so they lost in 5 innings due to the Mercer rule against Deer Park. First game was 16-6. Second game was 13-3. But I don't know. I think that a player that really stood out was Joey Miller. Joey Miller just had offensive explosions throughout the doubleheader. She hit 2 home runs, both to center field too, hard hit balls. She had 5 RBI on the day. One of her 3-run shots was again over center field, the wall, and she had a double as well. Yeah, I mean she's really the one that stands out. I think that Coach Kristen Wilson talked about how like she's just killing it. She's seeing the ball so well. If she continues this, her senior season will be terrific. She's the player that really stood out to me watching Clarkson softball. And yeah, I mean, Vea Craven got hit up a little bit against Deer Park, but the thing is, I think that Deer Park, I mean, Vea Craven has pitched a lot of innings for the Bantams this season, so it's kind of getting wear and tear on her a little bit. But overall, they're playing real well.
Sweet, awesome. Well, I think that's all the time that we have for today. But I really well done, Trevor. Thanks for joining us joining today on the podcast and sharing all your sports insights. And I really appreciate you for listening as well. I guess is there anything to watch for this upcoming week? Anything you're looking forward to, whether it's locally or nationally?
Idaho scrimmage again this Saturday is going to happen, so that's exciting to see. I think for the fans, for anybody that's able to watch, and then also Idaho scrimmage in a few weeks, and then also just there's prep sports going on, and prep sports are always fun to watch and keep track of. So yeah, read about sports, listen to sports, watch more sports. That's what I would say for you.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us on another episode of The Final Whistle. Be sure to listen wherever you listen to your podcast, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, and online at lmtribune.com. And for Trevor Junt, I'm Sam Taylor. Thanks for listening. Have a good one.